Eric Weihenmayer climbed to the top of the highest mountain on all 7 continents. Kathy Nimmer is Teacher of the Year in Indiana and in the top 4 in the country. Tom Wojtkowski is Vice President at Comcast NBC Universal. Lonnie Bedwell kayaked the 226 miles of the Grand Canyon. Diane Berberian is a triathlete and Ironman competitor. Now, these rock stars are at the top of their game, but they have one interesting thing in common. They're all blind. I met a blind person for the first time 17 years ago. It was my newborn son, Michael. Until that point, I didn't know any blind people. I mean, I knew of blind people. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and Stevie Wonder was all over the radio and on TV at the award shows. And also on TV was one of my favorite shows of all time back then, was Little House on the Prairie. So if you were a fan, you might remember that one episode where the one daughter, Mary, woke up completely blind. The parents were devastated. I was devastated. I mean, it was, they freaked out. They had to ship her off to a school for the blind where she had to live. I didn't have real life role models for blindness. So all I knew about blindness was it would be lonely, isolating, devastating. The day that our journey into blindness began was like one of those days when, you know how in the movies when everything's picture perfect and then all hell breaks loose? That was my day. I mean, it was back in the year 2000, and I was living in my brand new McMansion with my perfectly manicured green lawn, and I had the perfect little family of mommy, daddy, and bouncing baby boy. Swear to God, we lived in a town that was always rated the #1 place to raise a child. I was in my 20s. I still had the perfectly shiny hair that didn't require all the product to get that shine. It was amazing. It was a perfect life, actually. And then a doctor told me, not so much. I was like, blind? Wait, what? He's blind. Come on. How blind? Very blind. Well, he'll play baseball, right? No. Oh my God, will he drive? No. Well, what's he gonna do? Well, he'll have to learn Braille. Braille? And he's gonna have to walk with a white cane. The blind cane? My son? Kristin, the life you had planned for your son isn't gonna happen. Good luck. As that doctor finished talking, the feeling that had grown in the pit of my stomach climbed its way up to my heart, and it was squeezing tighter and tighter as images of the life I had planned for my son were racing through my mind. Things that I had planned since before I even met him. I mean, baseball, prom, his wedding. MVP, valedictorian, summa cum laude. I mean, his dad and I were pretty talented athletes, so I figured I had the football quarterback or the starting baseball pitcher. I mean, in every scene in my mind, he was achieving, succeeding, and happy. The whole scene went dark with that one sentence from the doctor. Your son is blind. But here's the thing. It would take me a while. But I would come to figure out that those were my dreams for my son. That was the life I planned for him. But what about Michael? What about his dreams? I mean, he was just getting started on a journey that he was supposed to be on and to live a life the way he wanted to live it. It turns out that my son has a mutation in a gene by the name of CRB1. And this mutation causes an inherited retinal disease called Leber's congenital amaurosis. We just say LCA because it's easier and shorter. So CRB1 LCA attacks the 2 pieces of the retina that you use to see, the rods and the cones. So the rods are for your nighttime vision, and the cones are for details and colors. Like you're using your cones right now to see all the details of my face. CRB1 LCA patients like my son don't see at night, and they can't see print in a book. Michael's never seen my smile, and he actually has no idea what I look like. CRB1 LCA is a rare disease that only affects about 300 kids in the United States. I know, it's that rare. Both parents have to be carriers of this to have an affected child, and each pregnancy stands a 25% chance of an affected baby. The CRB1 LCA is not included in those prenatal and premarital blood screenings. As you can probably imagine, I struggled with this for longer than I care to admit. And there was one particular morning when Michael was 3 years old. I was stuck. I got out of bed and made it to the foot of my bed, where that's as far as I made it that morning. And I was stuck in fear of how to raise a blind child well, because I didn't know how to do that. And if I'm being honest, I was stuck in grief over the loss of the life I was supposed to have, you know? And I was having one of my many conversations with God, we'll call it that. It's a full-blown tantrum, one-sided tantrum. And I was getting pretty good at them, giving him the what's now and how this really should go down, you know? And I could hear Michael playing in his room down the hall from mine. So I was doing all this in my head, you know, doing my screaming and yelling tantrum, and I was just like, this is so hard. And I actually think it's mean to do this to a kid. And what did I ever do to deserve this? And then I heard Michael making his way down the hallway. Michael didn't walk. Michael bounced, and he skipped, and he glided through every day. And he made his way into my room and stopped when he was about a foot in front of me, and he said, "Mommy, are you in here?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm right here in front of you on my bed." And he said, "Mommy, I just had to come down here and tell you, isn't this the best day ever?" And I was like, "Is it?" And he goes, "Mommy, the sun is shining, and I'm playing with all my stuff, and I'm just so happy." And then he spun around and went back to his perfect day. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought, he's not stuck. He's not devastated. He wasn't bothered by this blindness thing at all. I was the one stuck and so bothered. And I had such a limited view of this that all I could see was blindness is devastating. What I couldn't see was right in front of me, the happiest 3-year-old, the happiest kid I had ever met. Things started racing through my mind, like the pictures of a typical day with Michael at that point. I mean, him playing out in the driveway with that cozy coupe car thing, and then him splashing around in the neighborhood pool and playing at the playground, always smiling, always living completely unaffected by his challenge. Michael couldn't see with his eyes, but he could experience the world with his entire self. I mean, he could hear and taste and touch and feel his way through everything life had to offer. He just couldn't see with his eyes. Didn't bother him at all. I was the one that had been blind to the possibility of my son having an amazing life. So right then and there, I decided to stop seeing Michael's world as I thought it should be, and instead, how Michael saw it. He completely shifted my perception of blindness at that point, and that little 3-year-old taught me to see a whole new future for him. It was amazing. So who loves a curveball? My life is full of them. My second baby, Mitchell, was diagnosed with CRB1 LCA, just like Michael. This time, though, things were different. Now, I had a role model. I had Michael, and he had already taught me to see this whole thing differently, and I did. I grabbed my 2 boys by the hands, and we jumped into the typical, overscheduled, ridiculous life that everybody else was living. I mean, we went to the playground every day, and we were at the birthday parties, every single one of them, and we signed up for every music class that we could fit into our schedule. As they got older, they joined the football team, and they wrestled, and went out for the soccer team, too. Now, okay, I was right there with them in all of this, guiding, describing, narrating all the visuals that came their way. And do you know what the blessing is in all of that? Having to be with them teaching them about the world at that level, I got to be in their world all the time, where they talked to me all the time. They shared with me all their thoughts, all their dreams, God, their ginormous dreams. And when the time came for them to be independent, and they let go of my hand and took that white cane, I was actually cool with that. I was, because the thing I learned from guiding 2 blind kids to be independent, it showed me that our kids are extraordinary and they're remarkably capable if we give them the right tools. And my guys had their tools and they were ready to go. And little by little, I stopped regretting what I thought they were missing, and instead, I let them teach me what I was missing. So we were in Hawaii and learned how to surf. Michael patiently learned the rhythm of the ocean, and he figured out when to pick the right wave and ride it into shore. And then there was me. I was awful. He had to coach me on when to ride the wave. And then we were in Colorado and had a chance to snowmobile on this ginormous mountain. And I'm at the top thinking, how do you begin to describe the spectacular view to them? They didn't have time to wait on me describing. They were busy talking about the changes in air pressure and temperature and wind speeds. I mean, their view was so much broader than mine. Then we had an opportunity to be in Florida, where we spent time on the West Coast and the East Coast and compared the two. Well, I'm laying there watching sunrises and sunsets and trying to think of names of colors to tell them. They were off comparing the intensity of the waves and the difference in textures of the sand, and Mitchell was all over collecting all the different shells that he could find. I mean, they had so much to do and so much to talk about. So there's this term in blindness called sighted guide, and it refers to a sighted person guiding a blind person through a new or maybe a complicated space. It's pretty simple. The blind person takes the elbow or the wrist of the sighted person, and they walk together. Spending so many years being the sighted guide for my boys has allowed me to stay in touch with them, really in touch with them, you know what I mean? And now they're my guides for the things that I should be seeing in this world. And one thing they're adamant about is not to be seeing any limits on their lives. I mean, they've been on this limitless adventure where they're thriving and they're so normal, you know? That years ago, we enrolled them in the regular public schools in our neighborhood. Now they're in middle school and high school, and they're both in the top of their class. So the Center for Disease Control reports that there are 21 million Americans that are considered blind or visually impaired. It makes up about 9% of the population. But get this, of that 21 million, nearly 70% are unemployed. Nearly 70% of blind Americans are unemployed. And the kicker is, it has nothing to do with career options, but everything to do with the fact that people think blind people just can't do the work. Wait, there's more. 30% of blind Americans are living below the poverty line. Only 31% will get a high school diploma or GED, and only 14.4% will get a bachelor's degree or higher. And the kicker with that one is it has nothing to do with intellect, but everything to do with a lack of access. Could you imagine if only 30% of your high school class was going to graduate, or only 14% of your college buddies made it to the finish line? I mean, blind people are denied access to jobs, training, education, simply because we can't get our heads around how someone can access the world without sight. A former president of the National Federation of the Blind said this: "The future of sighted children depends on a proper education. The future of America's blind children is no different." Is no different. I learned that. My guys are not different. They just see things differently. And quite frankly, it tends to make them way more efficient than the rest of us. I mean, the things people rely on my blind kids for now, it's insane. So take this. My guys are legendary in our neighborhood because they can hear that ice cream truck coming way before the rest of us. It's like Michael and Mitchell are always like, wait for it, come on, sighted people, catch up to us. So thank God technology finally caught up to them and closed a ton of gaps in the classroom for us. So take a look at this. This is called the Apex Braille Note. And it's about the size of an iPad, sort of. My guys can read and write in Braille with this. And the best part is it hooks up to a regular printer, so they can print out their work for their sighted teachers to see it. But they're moving even faster than that now. They just email all their stuff directly to their teachers who get it. They access the internet with this. You stick a jump drive in the side, and they can read all of their books and textbooks in Braille. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, it was such a game changer for us. And it isn't just this. I mean, computers, cell phones, even cable TV, they're all being redesigned so that the blind and sighted can use the same product and get the same access. It's amazing. I mean, take it from me, a mom of 3 thriving kids, that things are finally changing in the world of the blind, and got ahead of myself. Let me back up for a second. I had a 3rd child. Sorry. I had a 3rd child, and when Carissa was born, I didn't need a doctor to tell me. I saw her eyes. And I saw her eyes recognize that I was her mom. It was a look my boys never had. Carissa can see, but she has a unique advantage that's even more convenient than sight. By the time Carissa was born, we were nearly 5 years into accessibility. I mean, she walked with her brothers on the bridges that we spent years building. Inclusion and access, they were words that she didn't need to learn. She lived them since birth. I had 2 blind kids, and then I gave birth to this little sighted person that would automatically include, adapt for, and embrace everyone. It's a gift that I'm finding so few people have, but everyone that meets Carissa sees it. Carissa's grown up watching her blind brothers go to school, play sports, get elected to student council, get in trouble, which she enjoys way too much. And she's watched them succeed and fail, just like the rest of us. Blindness, it's in the background at our house. And it's in the background of the homes and lives and careers of people living without sight. So take a look at these kids, and what do you think they all have in common? They're all baseball players, right? These were regular teams in our regular town, and my guys wanted in. Michael and Mitchell were the only blind kids to take the field. Michael led the team in RBIs. Mitchell was his team's fastest base runner. They both were voted as all-stars. They both were on teams that went to the championship, and they both won. When I gave birth to my kids, I expected success, achievement, and above all else, happiness for all 3 of them. Now, I initially saw blindness as a barrier to all of my dreams, but once I had a change in perception, my eyes were open, and man, I saw their successes, their achievements, and every day, their happiness. A change in perception can happen for all of us at any point in time. I highly recommend it sooner than later. Thank you.